life in 3 dimensions got me bent and got me twisted. I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest, my feet just might fail. I can't stand up.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Racially Speaking. I'm your host, David Phipps. Please subscribe or follow wherever you're listening or watching right now. I really do appreciate it. And as always, this episode is brought to you by my Patreon. Please visit patreon.com/racially speaking if you'd like to take your support a step further. For as little as $1 a month, you can support the justice work I do here on this show. Please and thank you, and shout out to my patrons who already do that. Thank you, guys. Look, I hope everyone had an excellent July 4th. So I wanted to do kind of a quasi 4th of July episode here. What I mean by quasi is if you're on social media at all, and even if you're not, you know that things are polarized. I've talked about how polarized everything is ad nauseum on here, really. And so what I don't want to do is continue to needlessly contribute to the polarization and back and forth to get a rise from one side or the other. Now, what I don't want to do is skirt around truth. You guys know me by now. You know I never want to skirt around actual truth. But I also don't want to not be accessible to too many people. So I don't want to diminish truth. I don't want to diminish justice. I don't want to diminish grace or mercy. And I'm always going to err on the side of looking out for the marginalized. And in this case, racially speaking, are people of color. Of course, a July 4th comes up, a Juneteenth comes up, really any holiday nowadays comes up, and things are heightened. The right's attacking the left's attacking the right, and we obviously need to meet somewhere in the middle, but that middle is becoming more and more gray in my opinion, and probably your opinion. And there are valid reasons to kind of check out, to say, look, I'm done with this, there's no right answer, I gotta dip. And to be honest, I struggle with that thought sometimes. I think about, man, this show's not working. These conversations I'm having outside the show's not working. I'm going to put my head down and get out of this. But I'm reminded that that is just kind of what comes with the territory in these justice conversations. I'm not fishing for compliments. I'm not looking for a pat on the back. I'm not looking to be validated and someone tell me, hey, you're solving all these issues. I just hope to move the needle in the small circles I run in small ways. And so I'm encouraged when I read any kind of autobiography or biography or see any biopic of people that have fought throughout history, whether they're well known or not. These are things that always ran through their minds at different points in their life. So I kind of want to start this episode with this because that's going to kind of give you a backdrop into where I'm going to go with this. So look, we just celebrated the 4th of July. What I do in my house is we're just honest with our kids. I've talked about this on the pods a little bit. We talked to them about what a lot of people believe the 4th of July is. And I believe on one side, it's not the truth. Dare I say, a lie. It's the notion that it's the anniversary of our country and everyone who is considered American was free, and that everything has been great since then. That's painting with broad strokes. That is the good old boy patriotism, patriotic way to look at things. It's the way I was brought up in a lot of ways in my schooling. A lot of you can identify with that. And intentionally and unintentionally was taught that. Paint with broad strokes on the other side. More and more nowadays, there's the opposite view of everything we ever learned was a lie. There's no middle ground. Everything about this country is pure. It's based on pure genocide. Everyone that ever did anything remotely close to diminishing slavery or diminishing education, diminishing a marginalized people group or anything are evil and are beyond repair. And America is the worst thing in the world. I think those are the two sides of the argument that continue to butt against each other in perpetuity. It's just indefinite. What I want to try and do in this short little episode, or short amount of time I've got with you guys, that you're allowing me to speak into some of this, is help bridge that gap in a way, again, that doesn't diminish one side or the other, but it's just honest. And you are perhaps going to feel like your side is being diminished. And I'm okay with that, not because I don't care, but I think it's healthy to do this in order for us to move forward and not feel paralyzed. So I want to say this. I, again, do not identify as a Republican or a Democrat. I try, especially on here, I try to just speak truth. And sometimes, and I don't think the answer is always just across the board to just remain in the middle, because that alone, in my opinion, is a political stance. And it causes, I think, a justice seeker to not be able to speak up for truth when it really matters. But I also find it essential to not find my identity or allegiance to one side of the aisle. So that's a little bit where I'm at. You can label me whatever you want, but that's honest to God where I'm at. I look at politics through the lenses of my Christian faith and my vocations at doing ministry, as well as in education and teaching. And so that's where I try to camp out and kind of stay in my lanes as much as I can. And of course, talk to people that are much smarter than me throughout the whole process. So here's where I'm at. There's so much that has happened. You might be wondering, hey, why is she talking about X, Y, and Z? That has happened since I last did an episode. And it's because I don't have time to talk about every single thing that happens racially speaking. But these are some things as it relates to July 4th, to America, and racially speaking, and Christianity that I think can be helpful to understand some of the disconnect in some of our justice conversations. So there are 2 to 3 stories that I think are worth synthesizing and talking through together and understanding and hearing each other out. So one, let me start here, is actually 2 of them I think are both kind of Texas related, but one is this, and you might have heard about this. There was a Texas school board about 2 or 3 weeks ago now that recently approved some public school curriculum that did 2 things. It is moving forward with doing away with teaching, as you can imagine, about a lot of civil rights issues. So dumbing down Jim Crow, dumbing down slavery, and dumbing down the African American history, essentially. It's worded. There's been other movements in my own state, Virginia, that have not gone through, but in small ways have gone through. There's of course been done away with teaching AP African American history in different states. There has been a whitewashing of certain educational curriculum in states like Florida. One organization that people are trying to push more and more on the right is PragerU. You can look that up. Maybe I'll do an episode on that in the future. That quite literally dumbs down American history, specifically African American history, and how bad slavery was. It further heroizes isn't a word. It further elevates Christopher Columbus. It makes it sound like Frederick Douglass was okay with slavery, and so on and so forth. And I think these are really dangerous things, as you can imagine. I think it's very harmful to everybody, not just Black people, but to everybody, to learn these things in such a distorted, false way. So back to Texas, what they did is voted to diminish and teach less truth about African American history and kind of what happened essentially with slavery at the founding of our country. Yet, in one fell swoop, they also voted to mandate and require the Bible to be read in the classroom. There's also been similar movements over the past, since this administration has been in office, to require the 10 Commandments to be posted in all the classrooms and blah, blah, blah. I think there's a middle ground here, Christians, specifically I'm talking to, on whether or not this is good. But I think that there is some disingenuousness with how we view our Christian beliefs and how important they should be held by others who don't who don't share our faith. I think that's really dangerous to do something that is the opposite of separation of church and state, and I don't think that's the way of Jesus. I think this ruling is much more adjacent to indoctrination, which, to be honest, is something that these same people have been really scared of. The word indoctrination, indoctrinating with things, of course, that aren't Christian has been their concern, but I'm concerned that many Christians making these decisions aren't willing to see how people are viewing us doing the same thing. We just justify it because it's through our own lens. I think that's a poor way to share Jesus with people personally, and I don't think that's how he went about his ministry. He, being Jesus, went about his ministry. So I think, of course, I believe, and I think many non-Christians believe in similar morals, similar Christian morals that I would, and that you Christians, if you're listening, would as well. But I think it's the principle of mandating Christianity in a public school classroom at the same time as doing away with teaching about African American history and the truth about our history. I think that's concerning. I don't think that is good. And again, I think that there is a better way to go about it. One is that I think it is inarguable that the Bible and Christian beliefs are a huge part of the founding of our country, but not in the way I believe that we are trying to apply it, or that some of these leaders are trying to apply it. I think it would be healthy to at least historically study the Bible, and I think it could also be helpful to study other religious texts to understand America, to understand different cultures without watering down one or the other, and have that be much more helpful to the Christian witness. And I'm saying that to people that think the only way to protect our Christian faith is to mandate in the classroom. I think that is an abuse of power, in my opinion. I think that's tough. I think that is perhaps not the way to go about it. And I think about the story of Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, how they lived out their faith being oppressed, never wavered on their faith, even to the point of risking their lives, but didn't look at it as something that should be mandated. But they looked at it as a relational opportunity, even with corrupt leaders. And that's maybe perhaps another episode right there. Look, I'm lobbing up all these different opportunities for more episodes. Let me put a pin in that right now. Actually, not a pin. I'm going to kind of piggyback off of that. The second story is that I got to paint with broad strokes here. This is where I might get uncomfortable. But these same people, politically, that are wanting to, one, mandate the Bible being taught in public schools, limit the teaching and water down the teaching of African American history, specifically things like slavery and the civil rights, also are the same people politically that are bent on and have shown support for voting to get rid of temporary protective services, which just happened by the Supreme Court around the same time, a few weeks ago, which is specifically, the results were Syrians, Haitians, get out of our country and head back to where you're from. You cannot have asylum. You are not safe staying here anymore. Get out of our country. Plenty of people, you can look these videos up. There's some really vitriolic, hostile videos out there by really powerful people that have literally told people, get the bleepity bleep out of our country. Same people that are tied to these, I'm doing air quotes again, like I like to do, Christian organizations. I think that is equally, if not worse, than the first story I just shared. And I think the polarization is hurting us all. I'll put that out there, but I think this conflation of God and country, we're seeing it, of why it's dangerous right there, specifically on this podcast for the Christian witness. I think that's very concerning. The Bible's very clear about how we treat the foreigner. The Bible's very clear about how we treat the marginalized. The Bible's very clear about how we're supposed to treat people across the board. Furthermore, America prides itself on being accepting of everyone. So what's going on here? It doesn't make sense either way if we're trying to stay true to what we've said America and Christian America is about. So I'm concerned about the rise in this kind of ideology, as racially speaking goes. Very, very concerned. We're telling Haitians to get out of our country. Haiti and Syria being a level 4, I believe, danger level concern, which means, hey, it could, like, you really could die coming back to these countries or traveling to these countries. But Americans, we're literally doing the opposite of protecting people. We're saying, hey, get out of our country. If it's unsafe, who cares? You're not our problem. Get out. It's devastating. It's devastating for entire communities. And please stay with me, because this is where I want to, regardless of where you're at politically, I want us to connect some dots I connected recently while reading about, and this is my July 4th theme, while reading about some of the history of our country. I'm no historian, but I think I'm right, and history teachers, reach out to me if you need to correct me when I say this. I think I'm right in saying what I'm about to say. Napoleon Bonaparte, look him up, look his history up. I'm not going to give a whole history lesson here. But he was at one time the leader of France. And Haiti had already gained its quote unquote independence out of slavery. And they gained it from France. Fast forward however many years, I believe like 3 to 5. This guy Napoleon Bonaparte, ended up financially not loving that, if you can imagine. He didn't love his financial situation, his power situation, once he started to live out his life and reach some inroads where he wasn't feeling great. And so, to simplistically put it, because I'm not a perfect or a professional historian, he says, you know what, never mind. He calls his boys together, calls his armies together, and says, we're going back to Haiti and reconquering them, because I can't make it without these slaves. So we're going back into the country. Come on, let's go. Again, fast forward, they go back, and what happens is they get their butts kicked. A mixture of Haitian freedom riders, I believe, successfully kicking their tails back out of their country, along with some yellow fever that ravaged a lot of the French army. They fought off and maintained their freedom. The slave revolt maintained itself. The freedom riders in Haiti protected themselves and held on to their independence and sent Napoleon and his armies back again. So they're up 2-0 against France. Stick with me. What happens after that is monumental for America. Napoleon's reaction after that is still, well, that didn't work. I still need my money. I still need my power. I can't get Haiti. They got me. So I'm out of there. I'm down 2-0. I'm not going back in for a third time, because I know how that'll end up. What he does is turns around and sells a large plot of land to our third president, Mr. Thomas Jefferson. Mr. Thomas Jefferson, Declaration of Independence, big time slave owner, sells this giant piece of land that at the time doubles the size of the United States to help his financial situation, his power situation, Napoleon that is. And then at a very cheap price, I think it was like $15 million. Even back then, that was very cheap to Thomas Jefferson. So it's a win-win between these two guys. I wonder if you guys know what piece of land this was. I think probably most of you do, because a lot of you are way smarter than me. But I was shocked to read this. Do you guys know what that plot of land was? The Louisiana Purchase. Most of us have heard about the Louisiana Purchase, but if you're like me, you don't know the ins and outs about it. You don't know all the stats and really what went into that, what that meant for the country. And most of you certainly do not know what led up to it. I say that. I tell this story because, again, painting with broad strokes, politically, and everybody, whether when painting with broad strokes or not, needs to understand this. But there is irony in this. I can make an argument that a lot of people who are delighted that we've ended temporary protection services, TPS, and telling Haitians, Syrians, foreigners really, we consider foreigners to go back where they came from, get out of our country, while saying we just need to read the Bible more and mandate that in the classroom, while kicking people out of our country because they're messing up our country. Immigrants, those same people that are doing these things, again, I'm painting with broad strokes to make a point here, are the people living in these states that would not have a state if it wasn't for the Haitian freedom riders defending themselves. So Haiti defends itself against Napoleon coming back in to conquer them and make them into slaves again. And because Napoleon loses again, he sells us the Louisiana Purchase. So a lot of Texas, then there's states like Arkansas, Iowa, the Dakotas, Oklahoma, obviously Louisiana, and I think upwards of 15 more states. All, I can make an argument, could kind of thank Haiti for the state they're living in, that they're now saying, Haitians, get out of here. My mind was blown when I read more about this, because I want to come full circle here. I'm not a public school teacher. I'm not a historian, but I am a justice seeker, and I care about us understanding what is true. And what I just said is political because politics affect people, policies affect people, but it's not me taking one stand on one side or the other. But what I'm saying does line up with a certain way of thinking if I'm talking politically. I say all this, I'm jumbled, I know, stick with me, because this polarization is hurting all of us. It's killing all of us. It's killing civil discourse. And I don't want to do that, but I have to say, make these connections. Hear me say this. I need to make this connection for us all, not knowing how to connect the dots I just connected recently for myself, and now hopefully for some of you guys, with what happened with Napoleon and the Louisiana Purchase and what's happening now politically today, weeks ago, is what we will not be able, is what a lot of these states are saying we should not be teaching these next generations. I think that is super dangerous. It is violent, and it causes people who get into power to be able to hold that power and abuse that power. And that, more than politics, more than social media, is what is causing this polarization. Last, I'll end here. I even believe that many more people than we think, agree with each other. But it's the few people at the top making these decisions, Hunger Games style, are the one that's why power matters, because there's people that have too much power that are able to continue to turn us against each other and usurp all these different levels of power and abuse it. I think that most people care and would care about the things I just outlined, but too many things like fear and saying, hey, these foreigners are going to take our jobs, these foreigners coming in and killing and raping people, that's all these foreign people do because of the border. No, there's middle ground, there's procedures of how we have immigration, there's middle ground. But the few people on both sides of the aisle that are at the top just want us to fight all this out and act like there's only two extremes, and I just don't think that is helpful or godly or loving. So what do you guys think as we think about the season of the 4th of July, America's 250th anniversary? Where are we at individually? Where are we at as people? How can we not just be paralyzed? How can we keep moving forward and understand that understanding and learning history is loving our country? If you're in America, right? That should be it. To water it down it should be a bipartisan issue that we don't want history watered down. And to a lot of people, think it's just all about making everyone feel guilty by teaching something about slavery and civil rights. It really shouldn't be. And shame on people that only make it about that, because it shouldn't be that. But what I'd say to people that push back are, there are so many actually white people in history that wanted to end slavery. Let's teach about them. It doesn't have to be just a whole hate day on white people. That's not what it is about. But some of y'all, that if someone just mentions the word civil right, a 2 word civil rights or slavery, that get clamped up and say, I can't hear that. You're not helping either. So this quote unquote compromise middle ground, I don't know where the perfect spot for that is, but I do know that this polarization is hurting all of us. And we have to have more of both truth and at times grace for each other when we don't always see the same truth. But we have to be able to have this free discourse and understand where each other are coming from, and understand when we're not able to have that, at whose expense is that coming from. I'd argue that it's, racially speaking, usually Black and brown people. Thank you guys for listening. Peace, and I'll see y'all next time. The music you're listening to was done by our guy Dylan Dent. He's also got some new music coming out soon, so I'll let you guys know about that when that's coming out. And our artwork and logo was created by the Ashley Bush. Please check out patreon.com/racially speaking for as little as $1 a month. You can support the justice work I do here on this show. Peace.
Life in 3 dimensions got me bent and got me twisted. I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest, my feet just might fail. I can't stand up. The nightmare might scare you, no worse than reality. They hunt you by day, R.I.P. Ahmaud Arbery. Everybody got a time, but that's less than comforting. I hope I'm alive by the time they choose to comfort me. Mosquitoes in the vein, or leeches on my soul. This money on my mind is a fracture in my bones. You get crippled by continuing existence like a ghost. And they wonder why we drink, and they wonder why we smoke, and they wonder why we think that everything's a joke. I'm shocked that we can sleep, must be the thought of letting go. Now I lay me down to sleep, I'm fed up with the valley. Now I lay me down to sleep, I'm fed up with the valley.